Yo, what is going on, guys? We are back today for another video, and we're going to be counting down the top 10 best champions in a specific class. However, before we get into that list, I just need to talk about a couple of disclaimers. And that's basically, when it comes to my tier list, that is not just my opinion. That is my channel, my community's tier list. And I use all your guys' thoughts and opinions, plus my own, to go ahead and make that. These types of videos, this is just completely my opinion on top 10 best champs. And my opinion is going to be different than everyone else's. It's going to be different than yours. And your opinion should also be different than everyone else's, because our opinions are based on our own personal experience playing this game. I've been playing this game for almost like 7 years, and no one is going to have the same exact game experience as me throughout all those 7 years. We all pulled different champions. We've all put in time into different champions. We're all in different communities and see different things. So like, there's no way we should all have the exact same opinions, and that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. So if you disagree with this, that's fine. That's normal, to be expected. Let's just keep things nice and civil in the comments. And yeah, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Alright guys, we're going to be counting down the top 10 best skill champions in this video. Before we get into the list though, we do have an honorable mention. And that is, hold on, let me just put this to 6, 7. And that is Moondragon. So, Moondragon is still very new. And I definitely think she has potential to crack the top 10. However, it's still just a little bit too soon for me. I'd like to see more gameplay, and I am very curious what they're going to do for her rebalancing, because I feel like she might get a bit of a tune-up, and I feel like that could be very powerful. Or they might just leave her alone. I don't know, but again, it's just kind of early. So I wanted to give her this honorable mention. However, she's not going to crack the top 10 list just because it is a bit too soon. Alright, let's go ahead and now get into the number 10 spot, and that is my boy and an OG legend of the contest, Blade. So man, let me take you back for a sec to 2017. It was October. It was Halloween. And for that month, we had not only 2 champions, but three champions come to the game. And that was Morningstar, Mephisto, and Blade. I'm pretty sure it was those 3 that came 2017 October. I'm like 99% sure. And when Blade came to the game, it changed. It changed everything. Because before Blade, we had like Stark Spider-Man, who had also come out that year, and he was very powerful. He quickly became one of the most powerful champions in the game. But Blade was a little bit different. Blade was not only powerful, he was overpowerful. He's OP, as the kids say. Overpowered. Yeah. Blade was just ridiculous when he came out. Literally, there was an entire movement started called Save for Blade. And that's what people did. They saved and saved their shards. And on the day he came back, it was Blade Day. Probably some of the most amount of crystals ever opened in the game for that time period. Definitely. Probably the most crystals ever opened that day. At that point in time. I'm sure now there's been way more open. But in that time, everyone and their mother was going for Blade. Luckily for me, I already had him when he first came out. But yeah, Blade, just insane. First of all, his regen. Blade has one of the best regens in the game. And it's completely in the player's control. You basically just sacrifice power for health. And the best part about this is if Blade is fighting an opponent who is not immune to the effects of bleed, and doesn't have any kind of way to shrug off debuffs, he's just going to have passive power gain the whole fight, because against a bleeding opponent, it says right here, when nearby bleeding opponents, for every stack of bleed on the opponent, generates 7% of a bar of power per second. So he has passive power gain, and then he can use that power to heal. So, like, it was just such a crazy concept. Now, the only thing that held Blade back slightly was that this was capped at 70%. Actually, 71%. It says 70%, but it goes 71. So, with that healing, you know, you can't heal to full. You can only heal to basically 3/4. That's still very good, though. That's still very, very, very good. If it could heal to full, Blade probably would have be regarded as the best healing champ in the game. But it's very nice. And then, you know, against dimensional beings, he just gains all these bonuses. He gets Danger Sense. And Danger Sense is very powerful. The only problem is that there's not a ton of dimensional beings. But at the time when Blade came out, some of the worst defenders in the game were dimensional beings. This includes the likes of Magic, Dormammu, and Mephisto, who came out with him. So Blade was hard countering some of the trickiest defenders in the game. But then, you know, this was expanded upon through his synergies. So with Dormammu or Mephisto, Danger Sense expands to the entire Mystic class. So, you know, Blade came out before Human Torch did. So Blade used to be the OG Mystic counter. You know, not even having class advantage. With the synergy, he was just the go-to option for Mystics. And Mystics used to be, like, right now, I would say, you know, the Mystic class houses probably some of the most defensive champs in the game. And Mystics used to be way, way, way worse. I'm telling you, like 10 times worse to fight against before, because Mystic Dispersion used to function completely differently. Dexterity functioned differently. And the way it worked with Mystic Dispersion was just really, really, really stupid. It was basically every time you dexed, you would re-trigger the buff. So you dex twice against a Mystic champion, they trigger Mystic Dispersion. So if they have 5 out of 5 Mystic Dispersion, and you dex like 3 times just trying to bait a special, you've already given them a bar of power. And it was just... it sucked. It really, really... it was so stupid, man. I'm so glad they finally changed that. But yeah, it used to just be horrible. Especially like Dormammu. Because if you dexed against Dormammu, not only would you give a Mystic Dispersion, you'd also just start degenning. It was just so horrible, man. That's why Dormammu used to be like the biggest pain in the butt in the entire game. But Blade, with that synergy... very good counter to him. Very powerful counter. Even though, you know, Dormammu's bleed immune, Blade had no problem taking him down. And then with Ghost Rider, you could expand Danger Sense to villains. So if you have Ghost Rider and Mephisto or Dormammu on the team, your Danger Sense expands to any villain of the contest, any Mystic champ, and any dimensional being. Covered a lot of ground. Covered so much ground back in the day. When Blade was in his prime. And then with Stark Spidey, who was one of the best champs in the game before Blade came out, you put them together, a crazy synergy for Stark Spidey, and then you gain plus 45% potency to all your Danger Sense bonuses. This was Ghost Rider, Blade, and Stark Spidey became dubbed the Holy Trinity. And that was probably like the most used 3-champ team ever, and probably for a long time, probably till like Ghost came out. Then it probably changed. But Blade, Ghost Rider, and Stark Spidey, man, just those are the good old days, man. Those are the good old days. So that's Blade coming in at the number 10 spot. Just an OG legend. A little history lesson for you guys on Blade and his reign in the contest. And basically what Kabam had to do to end Blade's reign was they had to indirectly nerf him. So the way this story ends, it's pretty anticlimactic, but essentially Kabam couldn't just nerf Blade. You know, they couldn't do that because the community would be so pissed. So what they did is they nerfed him by releasing new champions that hard countered him, essentially. So they would release champions like Iron Man Infinity War in 2018, who was bleed immune when he had an armor up active, and he wasn't a mystic, he wasn't a villain, he wasn't a dimensional being, so Blade was just terrible match for Iron Man Infinity War. And when Iron Man Infinity War came out, he became the best defender in the entire game. So that definitely took Blade down a peg. Then champs like Corvus, who are immune to bleed when the glaive is active, and Kabam just started to continue that trend, release champs like that Blade just couldn't do much against. And over time, it worked. Kabam's, man, they're evil geniuses at Kabam. They make a lot of stupid decisions, but they make a lot of smart, evil decisions. And it's interesting. And that was definitely one of them. And it worked. Blade, over time, he really did fall off. People just stopped using him because he just wasn't countering what the meta became. And so over time, Blade fell off. But he still gets that top 10 spot. I think Blade is a tremendous skill champion, and he'll always have a little bit of a special place in my heart. All right, let's get moving, though. Number 9, we have Attuma, freshly minted after his rebalance buff. So I'd say, man, Attuma and Shuri definitely show the full power of the rebalancing program. It's insane. They basically took two champions that were essentially irrelevant overall, and especially in like the top meta of the game. It took two champions that were irrelevant and just did a complete 180 on both of them and made them just hyper relevant in the current meta, in the current climate of mcoc. And in Attuma's case, that is defense. When Attuma was released, he was meant to be a good defender. However, he just wasn't. But they made some very big key changes to Attuma. I'd say the biggest being is that now his thorns can work through blocked hits. And that's a big one. Because before, you could hit his block and it'd be fine. Now you hit his block, you're still taking damage. And it's a lot of damage. As you can see, my Attuma is rank 5. And that is for Battlegrounds defense. That is the main reason for that. They also juiced up other stuff on him defensive. I don't know exactly, because I just didn't care about Attuma before he was rebalanced. So I'm not really too sure what he looked like before. But I know he was way easier to fight. Now, no. You need to bring a counter, or you're going to take a lot of damage. And so for that reason, that's what puts Attuma high up on this list. He is alright on attack as well. I'm not the biggest fan of his rotation, having to spam heavies to transfer the hydration into concussions to then get more thorn damage. I don't know, the heavy spam doesn't feel like seamless. It's very clunky and forced, and I don't like that, especially in like a Battlegrounds fight. I'm not trying to be like, I don't want to feel the need to spam heavies to get the most out of a champ. It's just not a fan of it. So not the biggest fan of Attuma on offense, but on defense, wow, it's crazy. Not to say Attuma's bad on offense by any means, especially in a little bit more of long form content. When you can fully utilize the special 3, you can get some pretty hefty bleed damage going. So yeah, Attuma coming in at the number 9 spot. Let's go ahead and move on now to this list. We have the number 8 spot. And that's a champion that I'm personally not the biggest fan of. However, I do still highly rate said champion. That is Crossbones. So Crossbones also got buffed. Crossbones used to be, I don't want to say irrelevant, because he was never irrelevant. He always had utility in just the fact that he can't crit. I don't know if Crossbones was the first ever champion to introduce that type of mechanic. He might be. I think he's definitely like the first. I know for a fact he's within the first 3 champs. I think he's within the first two to be just unable to crit. So that, just having that, always had like some level of utility to the character, because it was just such a rare thing. Nowadays, there's more than 5 champs that can do that, so it's not that big of a deal. But when there's only like 2 champs in the entire game that can't crit, it's all about supply and demand. There wasn't a high demand for non-critting champs, and there wasn't a high supply of non-critting champs. So without a high supply or without a high demand, Crossbones wasn't irrelevant, but he wasn't utilized much. When there was the demand for needing to not be able to crit, I did see Crossbones pre-buff a few times. I saw him in war a few times. He did get used. Not much, but that utility is good. Once he got buffed, though, that completely changed. Started seeing Crossbones way more, and rightfully so, because the buff was great. The buff on Crossbones was really great. You can manage the Furies a lot better now. Plus, that signature ability, you can purify incoming debuffs. That's huge. That is huge. The only problem is, for this to be super reliable, is going to require a high sig. So it does take some investment, but I think he's definitely worth it. Definitely worth it. But personally, I'm just not the biggest fan of Crossbones, but I do still highly rate him, so that's why he's coming in at the number 8 spot post buff. Alright, let's go ahead now, move on to the number 7 spot, and that is the first ever champion of Contest of Champions, and that is Aegon. So Aegon was the first ever being to win the contest, and that's why he's wearing, I believe it's called the Cosmic Belt, that he has on, that makes him even more powerful, because he won that thousands of years ago, or whenever it was. Aegon, the problem is just that there's nowhere for him to shine right now. Aegon is designed, he's built for the biggest, toughest, longest content. The content that most people don't like, that they don't want to do. The content that most people have incomplete. That's, Labyrinth of Legends, Abyss of Legends, type of content that just people would literally pay hundreds of dollars to other people to do for them, because it's just so long and time consuming to do, and mind numbing for some people. But Aegon makes it cake. You fully ramp up Aegon to his max combo of a 999, and he is just going to run through everything. The problem is that takes a while to do. It takes a few fights to do that, long fights. So, on a day-to-day basis, you're not going to be using Aegon. If you have all the content done in the game, you're not going to be using Aegon. And that's just kind of what sucks about him. He, when Aegon came out, there was no battlegrounds. So, that was never a consideration when Aegon was being built. So that just makes him, completely useless there, which is the biggest mode in the game right now. So that's really, really holding Aegon back. He has basically zero defensive potential. So he's not going to be doing anything on defense in Battlegrounds. But when Aegon can shine, he shines brighter than just about anyone else. I think that's the best way to put it. And because of his potential, he lands at the number 7 spot. If we're talking a champion, if we're talking like every champion in the game at their max potential, like fully built up or whatever it takes to get their max damage output, Aegon would easily be within the top 3. Easily. It's just the problem is that, you're not doing that on a daily basis. The last time I had Aegon at a 999 combo was like 2019. More than 3 years ago. On my main account, I should say. So yeah, like, it's just not meta relevant. That's the main thing holding Aegon back. He could really use something. I don't know. I'd love for Aegon to get some kind of like little tune-up or buff to make him relevant, like in Battlegrounds and on a more daily, schedule when you're playing MCOC, to use him more. but because he's so cool. Like, I love his story. I love the way he looks. It's just, you know, I can't use him most days, so it sucks. But that's Aegon coming at the number 7 spot. All right, let's keep going. At the number 6 spot, we have Karate Mike's favorite champ, and that is Baron Zemo. So Baron Zemo is a very interesting champion, and there's been some controversy with this character. A lot of controversy with him and the whole root mechanic, which basically, if you're uninitiated in the root discussion, basically the way root has always functioned is as a power lock, a pseudo power lock. When an opponent was rooted, they would not throw a special. Period. They just would not throw it, whether they're at 1 bar, 2 bars, 3 bars. If they're rooted, they're not throwing a special. And root came out like the end of 2021 or something, I believe, with Kraven. So, you know, root has been in the game for more than a year, functioning the way I just said. And then Zemo came out start of this year, again functioning the way I said with his root. And then just recently, Kabam changes root so that if they get to a special 3, they can throw it. That's a big change. That is a big change. And it very much so changes the way you can play these characters and certain things you can do with them. You know, for example, if you have a root opponent with Zemo, and then, you know, you're close to a special 2, and they're not close to dying, but like with another, you know, set of rooted combos, another special 2, they'll probably go down. So, you know, before, you could just chain that root into another special 2, refresh the root, you know, and keep going, and then, you know, get the kill. Now, you can't do that if they're at a special 3, because you can activate your second root, try to go in, but if they're at a special 3, they can just throw it now. You couldn't do that before. So that is a big change. And Kabam acknowledged it's a big change, and they gave out rank down tickets, but only for Kraven, and not for Zemo, which is stupid. If one character is going to get rank down tickets that has root, the other character should too. Especially that when they came out this year, especially when people spend a lot of money on them. And especially when people spend a lot of money on deals to invest in these characters. Which a lot of people did. A lot of people took Zemo right to rank 5 as soon as they got him. And I'm sure, and there's a lot of people unhappy about this. So, you know, that really sucks. You know, if all this didn't happen and I was making this video before all this happened, Zemo probably would have been higher on the list. But because of all this, he's only in the number 6 spot. But, however, you know, Zemo is still a good champion. After he's rebalanced, he is going to be weaker. He's definitely going to be weaker. But he is still a very good champ. And there's a lot he can do. Karate Mike, I think he not intentionally overhyped Zemo, and I don't think he was intentionally trying to do that at all. But I think that was a byproduct of Karate Mike showing off what Zemo can do in his hands. But just because, you know, a champion can do something in Karate Mike's hands doesn't mean that champion's going to do the same thing in your hands, or my hands, or anyone else's hands. Because Karate Mike can get the absolute most out of Zemo. I can't. Most people can't. So I think that's kind of what happened with Zemo there. But he is very powerful. There's a lot he can do. And yeah, I think Zemo will age quite well in the contest. And I think when we do get some more endgame content, I think he'll be pretty good there as well. Because the coolest thing about Zemo is that his bleed debuffs are permanent, which is something we haven't really seen before. You know, usually there's a way to pause or refresh, but no, with Zemo, it's just indefinite, permanent, perpetual. It's there, it's not going anywhere. And he can just do that with bleeds, and he can stack these up to 99. So once there's some content that Zemo can really utilize that ability in, I think he's really going to shine, and he could jump up some spots on this list. But I think right now, the current climate of the game, I can't put him any higher than the 6th spot. So that's Baron Zemo. All right, let's go ahead and move on now to get into top 5. Number 5, we have, I would say, a community fan favorite champion here, and that is Shang-Chi. So Shang-Chi only coming in at the number 5 spot, and it's tricky because I feel like a lot of people will disagree with this. A lot of people want to put Shang-Chi higher, way higher, like top 3, top 2, even top 1. Now, personally, I really can't put him any higher because there's just other really good skill champs. However, I am not trying to take anything away from Shang-Chi, but there is one big problem with him as a overall well-rounded character, because he's not well-rounded. He's not a well-rounded overall character. He's one-sided. That one side being attack. Shang-Chi is a potato on defense. I don't like that. I really don't like champions that have zero, defensive use. I hate it. It really bugs me. And I don't like to rank up those types of champions. Like, they have to be something really special on attack for me to upgrade, to rank them up again in the current state of the game. But I did rank up Shang-Chi. I took him to rank 4. And I think Shang-Chi is one of the few where he is so good offensively that it does almost make up for the zero defensive use. But not quite. It almost makes up for it. Not quite. It still bugs me. But yeah, man. Shang-Chi, just an absolute beast on attack. With his combos, he is like the definition of a skill champion. I really like Shang-Chi, and in really truly skilled hands, he can pull off the impossible, or what I thought was impossible. Go watch some of Swadia L's videos using Shang-Chi, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But it's ridiculous. He basically just keeps an opponent in the corner and just repeatedly wails on them, even though they're at 3 bars of power, and he's playing so precise and perfectly that they don't even the defender doesn't have enough time to throw the special 3. They don't even have a frame to throw it. When I saw that blew my mind. Yeah, I think Shang-Chi is a really good, the perfect class for him is skill, because with the right skills, yeah. And even if you don't have that level of skill, he's still going to be very good. You just have to learn his basic combos, which medium applies a slow debuff. Medium gives you some cleanse passives to get rid of debuffs. Medium, medium applies an unblockable buff, which is great. You can break through your opponent's block. And then a full 5-hit combo, medium, triple light, medium, applies a stun. And, depending on the order that you use those combos in, whatever you do first is going to have more potency or duration. So, for example, the slow debuff, you apply that first, it's going to last longer. So, yeah, it's... I really like the way Shang-Chi works, the way he functions with those combos. It's really up to you. He's very customizable in the way that you want to play him, depending on the combos you want to go for, depending on what the fight calls for. It's great. I highly rate Shang-Chi. I really do. And my only problem is that zero defensive utility. And the reason he's just not any higher on the list is just because all the other characters above him do a lot of stuff too. So Shang-Chi landing at the number 5 spot. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to the number 4 spot now. And that is a 2023 champion, Kate Bishop. So Kate Bishop is landing in the number 4 spot. And again, this is another one where there's a large group of people that would say I'm wrong here and say Kate Bishop should be even higher. And I don't disagree, It's just that the other 3 champions I have, I can't justify putting them any lower. So this was as high as I could realistically put Kate Bishop, which is still good. You know, number 4 is still high praise in the entire class. That's very high praise for a champion that just came out this year. That is high praise. You know, Kate Bishop, she just has absurd damage. She just truly has some of the best damage in the game, and it's just so easy to get. Just throw a special 1, get a perfect release, be it with the cold snap. You can select a pre-fight for it, so you stay in that, and that's just the damage and the effect that you get, and you just watch the damage take the opponent down, and it's basically as simple as that, which is pretty nuts. And the best, I'd say the best part about that, is that it's cold snap, which is one of the rarest immunities to have in the game. There's not a ton of cold snapping champs, so that's a very good damage source to be utilizing. Very, very good. So yeah, highly rate Kate Bishop. She has a passive stun, which is very, very powerful. Extremely powerful. And she can shrug stun debuffs if you try to attack her when she's stunned with the stun debuff, which is very annoying when fighting her. She's not the best defender, but at the same time, she can really trip you up. She's tripped me up a lot, way more than I care to admit. So yeah, the only thing I don't like about Kate, which, I mean, this isn't a bad thing necessarily about her. It's actually a good thing, but I think it's just simply stupid. I just don't think it makes any actual sense, and I don't like when things don't make sense. That actually really bugs me. Like, I'm a very logical thinking person, so when something just doesn't make sense, like, it bugs me. And what really just truly irritates me about this character is her block proficiency. Her block proficiency is 71.5%. If we go ahead and compare that to, let me think of a super champion that should have a ridiculously high amount of block proficiency, who immediately comes to mind. Let's say Captain America, with his vibranium shield. Captain America has a vibranium shield that he's blocking with. His block proficiency should be stupid high. What is it? Let's take a look here. 76.8%. So it's higher than Kate's, but not by that much. Like, how is Kate's block proficiency almost comparable to Captain America when all she has is a bow and she's like a teenager? Like, what? Let's compare another one. Doctor Doom, he has metal armor, mystic tech, like, he has all kinds of things to create that mystical force field bubble around him when he's blocking. What is his block proficiency? 71%. It's lower than a teenage girl with a bow and arrow. That just really bugs me, man. I don't know why. It makes no sense to me at all. It makes zero sense. And I don't like it. I don't like it. It should not be that high. And it makes her powerful. No doubt about it. It makes her even more powerful because that block proficiency is so ridiculously high. It just shouldn't be, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of that. Make the game make sense. That's all I want, is for things to make sense. Okay, let's go ahead and move on though now to the top 3. And coming in at the number 3 spot, we have Kingpin. Now, Kingpin is, let's see, the third? Yeah, the third champion on this list that has been buffed. The skill class has received so many buffs. I mean, all of them were warranted. And Kingpin was definitely one of those best buffs. Kingpin used to just suck. He used to be basically irrelevant. No one used Kingpin before. He just I barely even remember what he used to do. He always had the degen on the special one, but I don't even know if that changed. But yeah, he used to just be terrible. But now, dude, now Kingpin is just absolutely insane. You want to get Kingpin up to signature level 65. Mine's 85 just because I got him to 65, then I pulled him again, so that's where the extra 20 levels came from. But just 65, and he's good to go because he's going to start the fight with 3 of his rages. Now, if you want to get another rage, you got to go all the way up to Sig 200. So it's a big investment for that one extra rage. So I think Sig 65 is just the sweet spot. But those rages are debuffs. So that actually gives Kingpin basically just, passive healing through willpower. But that is very powerful. And because that is so powerful, in his base kit, his base regeneration rate is set to 50% instead of the normal 100%. Because it would just be so busted. He'd have the best regen in the game, if it wasn't cut in half by that. And so Kingpin's also immune to all effects that modify regeneration rate except poison. I'm not even sure if I actually knew that. That's cool. Yeah, and the rages are just a debuff with no inherent effect. Kingpin gains 6% chance to purify. Or non-rage debuffs. He gains a 6% chance to purify, and he would gain a rage if that happens. And these rages, I believe, is that how he gains more special 3 damage? So on special 3, gain 4 rage and refresh all overpower buffs. 100% chance to inflict a stun debuff. The special 3 doesn't sound like much, but it hits ridiculously hard. Like, special 3 just does so much damage. Special 2 gives you an unstoppable buff. Not really the best special to use. I'd say the special 1 with Kingpin most of the time. I'd say if you're running suicides, special 3 is the way to go. If you're not running recoil or suicides, just special 1. Spam the special 1. You're gonna get degen debuffs. It's gonna do a lot of damage. Degeneration is one of the best damage over times in the game because, like, cold snap's good, but degen's even better. Because is there any champ that's just straight up immune to degen? There's a few champs that can kind of get around it, but I don't think there's any champ that's just straight up immune to, like, a degeneration debuff. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but yeah, degeneration is a really good damage type to have. And not only is this just dealing damage, it's also reducing defensive ability accuracy and attack. So their attack gets cut in half, and they lose 65% defensive ability accuracy. So stack up, 2 of those, and you're looking at 130%. Looking good. So you can turn off some annoying defensive abilities with Kingpin there. I used to use him. I mean, I still do use him. He's on my AQ team for a safeguard path. So stack up those debuffs, and I'm bypassing safeguard. It's great. On that path, there's also a node called consistent combos or something consistent, where if you don't do a full 5-hit combo, you get a glancing debuff. This is one of the most annoying paths in the game. Like, it's horrible. But Kingpin, just a hard counter for it because, he with those degens debuffs, he can counter safeguard. He can bypass it. He can deal more than 1% damage. And if you don't finish a combo, you get that debuff on you. Kingpin just shrugs it off. Gets rage. Gets more damage. It's great. It's incredible. Kingpin, just such a well-rounded character. And he does have defensive potential. Kingpin is not the best defender by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not a potato on defense. He can cause some problems. He can cause some time. He can shrug parries, and he can just be kind of annoying if he doesn't want to bait a special. And if he gets to a special 2, that unstoppable is going to last a while. Plus, it's not the easiest special 2 to evade. So I like that Kingpin does have some defensive potential as well. I don't think he's the best skill champ in the game. I do think he has some powerful synergies though, and with the right synergies, maybe with Mr. Sinister, Mr. Sinister, I believe, has the synergy that on his end, if we can go to Mr. Sinister, it'll show us. But it's basically just whenever the opponent throws a special attack, you get a power lock or power drain debuff, I think it is. Let's see here. So yeah, each time the opponent uses a special attack, they become power locked for 6 seconds. Or it is a power lock, which is very nice. Just to power lock your opponent after they throw a special, dude. That's awesome. So Kingpin with that synergy is pretty great, and then you also give him the Hood synergy, which gives him plus 100% Rage, Purify, Ability, Accuracy. So you're just going to be shrugging off with a more guaranteed rate, which is really great. Because, sometimes you can get unlucky and just not shrug debuffs, and that is fairly important, if you're on a path with a lot of incoming damage over time effects that could actually start to wear your health bar down, if you're not shrugging them consistently. So those are some very powerful synergies that Kingpin has. I'd say if those were in his base kit, then I think there could definitely be an argument for Kingpin being the best skill champ. But just in his base form, I don't think he's the best. I don't think he's number 2. I think he is number 3 though. So that's Kingpin. All right, moving on. Number 2, best skill champion in the entire game, and that's Valkyrie. And some people will disagree with me on this, probably a decent amount of people, but I know for a fact, I guarantee you, there's a lot of people agreeing with me, and even thinking Valkyrie should go higher, should go to the number 1 spot. Can't put her in the number 1 spot because the champion in that number 1 spot, I just really firmly believe they are the best skill champ. But Valkyrie is pretty darn good. Valkyrie, the comparison I like to make is she is the new version of Quake. Now you might not think so, but let me explain. Yes, Quake and Valkyrie are completely different champions. They function completely differently. They don't work nearly the same. They do very different things. They're of opposite classes. However, the two main key things that they have in common, well, they're both female, for one. But for two, the big thing, the entire reason why I make the comparison is that they do the same thing, which is through their own way, they counter annoying BS. And not only do they counter annoying BS, they counter like 90% of the annoying BS in the game. To be able to counter 90%, I'm just making that number up, but it's a very high percentage of just the annoying BS that you usually need to bring a direct counter for. Just be able to counter it. That is insane. That is just like a maxed out utility. What's the right word? Maxed out utility. Can't think of the right word here. Stat. That's what I'm looking for. A maxed out utility stat. Even like higher. That like if on Kabam's stats, it's out of 5. Like Valkyrie's utility should be a 6 out of 5. Same with Quake. Like it's more than what the scale can even hold. Because that's just how much utility these types of champions have. With Quake, you just hold heavy and you evade, and that's it. With Valkyrie, it's a lot more hands-on. You still actually have to touch the opponent. However, you don't have to touch them directly. You just touch them through their block. Just hit their block. Now, some champions have annoying BS when you hit into their block. Not many. Barely any at all. And the only one that even comes to mind that was recently added to him, which was earlier in this list, Attuma. Valkyrie's not a good Attuma counter anymore because now she takes so much damage hitting into his block. Before, she probably was a good counter to him, but so that is a slight nerf to Valkyrie overall, kind of. Attuma getting buffed like that. However, that's just one matchup. Doesn't matter a ton. But yeah, Valkyrie just basically hits into the block and just that's it. That's it. Just hit into the block and you deal absurd damage, and you also gain power. Now, that in and of itself is incredible and makes Valkyrie a really powerful champion. But that plus one other thing just lands her in the undisputable top 2 skill champs in the game, in my mind. Again, my opinion, my mind. She's undisputed top 2 best skill champs in the game, and nothing will change my mind, because the first thing I already told you guys, just, hitting the block, countering BS. But the other aspect of Valkyrie, which is honestly almost as good, with her signature ability. And you do want to have Valkyrie at a signature level of 200, because that allows this to just be one effect. One pierce effect and one bulwark effect. This is an extremely powerful signature ability. The second part of it, when Valkyrie has one bulwark effect, she is immune to stun debuffs. Now, if that expanded to stun passives as well, that would be really nice. However, it's only stun debuffs. I don't even think I actually knew that. I thought it was just stun immunity. So that is slightly annoying, but still, stun immunity is great. It can definitely come in handy in all kinds of situations. But what's way better than stun immunity is countering Unstoppable. And not only does Valkyrie counter Unstoppable, she is undisputedly the best Unstoppable counter in the game. And anyone who wants to argue that with me, I'll argue with you until you're convinced, because it's just a fact that Valkyrie is the best Unstoppable counter in the game. It's just a fact. It's a straight fact, because she just counters it. She doesn't need anything special to counter it. It doesn't matter if she has class disadvantage. She doesn't need to get a debuff on the opponent. She isn't limited to countering Unstoppable buffs. It's just simple. It's do 11 hits, get your pierce effect, your pierce buff, that's permanent, and that's it. You counter every and all kind of Unstoppable in the game. Simple as that. Doesn't matter if there's class disadvantage. Doesn't matter if it's an Unstoppable buff. Doesn't matter if it's an Unstoppable passive. Doesn't matter if it's an Unstoppable Enrage timer, in Labyrinth, or Abyss. It doesn't matter. It simply does not matter. Valkyrie will counter the Unstoppable. And that is my favorite part about Valkyrie. That is just so powerful, because there's no limits. There's no limits on it. Every other champ that counters Unstoppable has some sort of limit in place. Something preventing them from countering some type of Unstoppable in some type of matchup, but not Valkyrie. And that's what makes her the undisputed best Unstoppable counter in the game. So being the best counter in the entire game at something will always make a champion relevant and highly rated. So to have something like that, plus countering so much BS in the game just by hitting block, it just makes her easily top 2 best skill champs in the game. And my mind will not change on that. Like, it's just ridiculous what Valkyrie can do. And on top of everything I just said, in the right hands, again, she belongs to the skill class. It makes so much sense, because I can play Valkyrie and put up good times with her and take on hard fights. But then you see someone who has a complete mastery of Valkyrie play her, and they fully ramp her in 30 seconds, less than 30 seconds, and it's just insane. So if you play Valkyrie to her fullest potential, she's even crazier, and she gets some of the fastest times in Battlegrounds. It's insane. It's absolutely bonkers. So that, for all those reasons, the utility of just countering so much BS, the best Unstoppable counter in the game, and having a very skillful rotation that can be utilized, makes Valkyrie the second best champion in the game. Honestly, I'm even thinking like, man, is she the best skill champ? I don't know. I might be convincing myself she is. But that's Valkyrie. Number 2 spot. Yeah, alright. Now, only one champ left. You guys all know who it is. I've said this champ's the best skill champ a million times. And I'll say it a million more. And that's Nick Fury. So, you know, Nick Fury, the one thing I see a lot of people say to discount him and to just basically make an excuse that he's not the best skill champ is like, oh, but he requires deep wounds. And it's like, yeah. So? It's like, yeah. Like, do most people not run deep wounds? Like, I feel like deep wounds is a pretty common mastery to be running. Like, I don't know. Maybe am I the only one who's typically running deep wounds? Maybe. But yeah, I don't know. I just think that's such a bogus excuse to try to discount Nick Fury. It's like just put on deep wounds then, you know, get the most out of the character. I don't know. I just think Nick Fury, he is so well-rounded. He is just the most well-rounded skill champion. And for that reason, that's why I put him at number 1. You know, I just talked about how good Valkyrie is, but she does have one area where she's lacking, and that is defensively. She's not the worst defender. You know, she can shrug off stuns with RNG, so she can, you know, she could get stunned, she could shrug it, she could maybe punish the opponent when they go into attack. Maybe, you know, that's pretty unlikely. But, you know, it's something at least. But Nick Fury, on the other hand, this guy literally breaks the mold of the game. He literally breaks the mold of the entire game. Especially when it comes to an area like Battlegrounds. Because Nick Fury functions differently than every other champ in the game. He has 2 lives. Every other champ just has 1. You know, you take down their first health bar. Maybe they have some kind of cheat death mechanic at the end where they can prolong things. But not Nick Fury. No, you kill his first life. Boom, he pops back up to full health. Now you got to deal with him again. And now, when you deal with him again, he's got a Fury that makes him hit way harder. He also becomes stun immune. And when he throws his special one in his second life with that Fury, he's going to gain double the amount of tactical charges. Meaning, good chance he's going to go unblockable. So, Nick Fury is just one of the best defenders in Battlegrounds, and always will be, for the sheer fact that he has 2 lives, and he functions differently than every other champ. Now, have seen, you know, some champs that can counter Nick Fury, you know, like Penny Parker and Toad, and now it's interesting because there's a brand new champ, 2023 champion, that was made specifically in mind to be countering Nick Fury's second life, which is Danny Moonstar. So, you know, I think that's kind of a testament to how powerful Nick Fury is. That we're talking about a 2019 champion that Kabam is still trying to make hard counters for in 2023. 4 years after this character came out, there's still a need for hard counters. Like, if that doesn't attest to Nick Fury's power on defense, man, I don't know what does. Like, 4-year-old champion, and they still need to make new counters to him. And even with those new counters, like, it's not an easy thing to pull off. I've seen more failed attempts with people using Danny Moonstar to try to stop Nick Fury's life than I have seen successful ones. So, like, even the champion that's designed to counter him doesn't do it all the time, and it's like more of like a 50-50. Honestly, more of like a 60-40. Like, 60% of the time it doesn't work, from what I've personally seen. So I think that is just such a testament to Nick Fury's defensive potential. So yeah, I think that's crazy. Now, another thing I hear a lot of people say about Nick Fury is that he doesn't need the SIGs, and that it's a defensive, signature ability. And I 100% disagree. 100% disagree. I think Nick Fury's signature ability is, first of all, extremely powerful. Yes, defensively. It's going to prolong the fight by a good margin, especially when it comes to battlegrounds. Every second counts. So to just get more time of Nick Fury staying alive is 100% worth it. But honestly, the reason I initially invested my SIGs into Nick Fury was for an offensive reason. And this is another reason why I think a lot of people discount Nick Fury's potential, because they don't think the same way I do. The way I think about Nick Fury is, deep wounds or not, I'm thinking about Nick Fury as a champion that I can use in almost any scenario and finish the fight with full health, regardless of how much damage I do to the opponent or the amount of damage I take. If played, again, skillfully, which again, he belongs in the skill class, it fits narratively. If played skillfully, you can finish any Battlegrounds fight with Nick Fury at full health without pausing. Some people will be like, oh yeah, Nick Fury, you can just pause. You can, and that's definitely, kind of a cheesy and easy way to do it with him. But again, if you skillfully, keyword here, name of the class, name of the game here, you can end fights with Nick Fury at full health. Any fight. For example, Mephisto. Mephisto is, Mystic Champ. He has his aura of Incinerate. Nick Fury is not Incinerate immune, and yet I've finished Mephisto fights with full health, because you just gotta time that second life to coincide with the end of the fight. You regen to full, boom, end it. And why this signature ability is so good in those types of scenarios is because after you die, and you trigger that second life, your health bar shoots back up to full. The higher the signature ability, the lower it's going to go down. So that means the bigger window you have to end the fight and still retain a high health bar. So that was the initial reason why I invested SIGs into Nick Fury, and it made it a lot easier to utilize that strategy. Even a SIG 1 Nick Fury, again, if you play it perfectly, skillfully, you can finish fights with full health, with a full yellow bar, but the window is a lot tighter, it's a lot smaller, because if you don't time it perfectly, if you're like a second or two off, you're going to take way more damage if you're at a lower SIG level. So I really do highly rate those SIGs on attack for that type of play style, to utilize Nick Fury in those types of matchups. And I think if you're able to utilize Nick Fury in those types of matchups, you're able to get the most out of him offensively. And for all those reasons, that's why I just highly rate Nick Fury. He's just such a Swiss Army knife that can take so many different kinds of fights and matchups. And that just, the signature ability and the second life is just one of the most powerful mechanics in the entire game. And it's one of the most unique mechanics as well. And I think for all those reasons, that's really what puts Nick Fury as the best skill champ in my eyes, in my opinion. Through all my testing and experience playing this game, I rate Nick Fury the highest in the skill class, and that is why. So that's going to go ahead and do it for this video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. One other honorable mention, I'd say, is my boy Korg. Korg, not much on attack, but, tried and true top 3 defender in the game. So he deserves a shout out. But, yeah, that's going to go ahead and do it for this video, guys. Let me know if you agree, disagree. Tell me in the comments why. But again, let's keep it civil. This is all based on my experience playing the game for almost 7 years. Hope you guys enjoyed. Drop a like if so. Subscribe for some more content. Peace.